Hello. So let's speak a little bit about how to create maps and other geo-visualizations using Vega-Lite. So in the recent versions of Vega-Lite, there has been a lot of improvements that actually allow you to create certain things. We are going to start, this is a fork of the tutorial that we just made for D3. I explain in there how to get the data and how to get started with it. And we are going to try to replicate as much as we can this thing with Vega-Lite. So what you need to start with something like this is that you need a topo.json file. Actually, if you check here in the file attachments, then you're going to find this Colombia Departamentos and Municipios file. That is the one that I use for building that. So let me load it in here, or I think it's loaded down here. So let me get that up here. And then, as you can see, of course, I should have that only once. So let me get rid of this one. There we go. So basically, as I was saying, like this is a topo.json file. Topo.json, it's a format that I think was invented by Mike Bostock. I might be wrong. But it's an extension on GeoJSON, that it's another like for geographical information systems file but that it's way more compressed. So topo.json is super compressed and it's not as verbose as GeoJSON, and it's very good for distributing files as this one that I'm having in here. And that is the file that you need to use when working with Vega-Lite. So what I recommend you to look at before starting to this is, like, imagine that you want to create a map or any other geo information data. Then at the very least, you're going to need a latitude and longitude of all of your points or whatever you're going to use. But if you want to go beyond that and you actually want to show shapes, like as we are doing in the example that we get in there, then you need to get files like these ones. You need to get the GeoJSON files or shape files. So these shape files are used a lot on other information GIS systems, geographical information systems, like Esri, for instance, I think, and ArcGIS. And then you can convert from that to GeoJSON. For checking that, you can also take a look at this one, this tutorial from Mike Bostock, command line cartography. I speak a little bit more about that in the D3 version, so take a look at that. Once you convert that into GeoJSON, you can convert it into topo.json. I have another notebook in here that I also reference that shows you how I did that for this specific one. But what you end up having, especially on this one, it's something like this. You are going to have a file that has a type, in this case topology, some attributes like a bounding box. It can also have some rotations or transformations that need to be done to actually make it work. It's going to have a bunch of objects, as you can see them in here, and in this case you are going to have some geometries. For these ones, it's going to be, if I'm not mistaken, this is kind of one of the types of GeoJSON, this geometry collection. And then in here, it's collapsing the arcs that are the ones that are used for drawing things, and in topo.json, they are stored in relative numbers and also in integers, so it doesn't have problems with floating numbers, whatever you pronounce that. So let's get started with this. So with Vega-Lite, it's like, let's start by drawing like the map. So there is we need Vega-Lite. So let's say that we're going to have Vega-Lite from Vega-Lite API. And then once you do that, then making sure that you use the right amount of quotes, then you can start creating, like, let's say, mark geoshape. So you use mark geoshape when you want to draw first, like the borders of your shapes. So let's start by rendering this and the data that we're going to use for this. So basically what you want to pass in here is a topo.json file. So if I'm not mistaken, like, since this is my topo.json, then you just tell Vega-Lite, like, hey, I'm going to give you a topo.json. Here it is. And then remember that when I was expanding this, you could see these objects. So if you check the D3 version, you also have to specify which ones you're going to be drawing. Like, for instance, let's say that I want to start by drawing the Colombian state or departamentos. So I think you call that a feature. That is what is called a feature. if I can spell that, and then I'm going to be passing this feature. And then that gives us our first map. That was easy, right? So then we can say this is going to be a width of, let's say, 0.8, because I need space for a legend in there, and then the height. So now I have that. I can also say this is not going to be filled. Let's try that. I'm missing something in here. I forgot that one. Should be this one. Did I say false in there? There we go. I wonder what I said before. So in any case, like for the stroke, we can pass something like a dark gray, as you see in there. And now we have the departamentos. If you want to show the municipios, you can do basically the same thing. And the only thing you need to change is pass the other object, that is this one. And then you do this, and you got the municipios. Now, if you want to combine them both, what we can do is that we can say this is going to be my depths. And then let's stop it in here. And then let's create my municipios. And I'm going to stop them in here. And then what I'm going to return is a BL layer. So I'm going to layer them together. And I can show my departments and my municipios with, and I don't need to pass the data. As you see, they actually have different data. So that's why I need to pass different parameters in there. So now they're layered on top. So if I change the order like this, and then change this one to have a more subtle color, like let's say, for instance, maybe CCC or something like that, then you have a better map. Now, if you actually want to show, let's say that you want to show something that shows the amount of people that lives in each one of the cities, so we can use a point map for that. So we can go and say that I want to create some points. And then the key in here is that this data, like as you can see, these GeoShapes, they're going to use the TopoJSON. But the points, it's actually going to be a mark point. So it's the regular one that we have. And then what we need to pass is the latitude and longitude information. And we actually have that in here, nested all the way down in here. So if you see inside my object, I have objects, I go into this specific object, and in there I have geometries, and inside that I have properties, and inside the properties I have latitude and longitude, okay? So what that means is that the data that I have to pass to my points is going to be my map data. Then I go into objects, I go into my municipios, and then we say that that municipios has a geometries, and that's going to be like the data that I'm going to be using. And then from there, I need to start changing my encoding, when I'm going to be using latitude and longitude. And my field that is going to be quantitative for this one is going to be properties. So latitude. So basically, Vega-Lite has this nice feature that you can pass like any JavaScript object. So you can say properties and then dot and latitude. That is going to be my element in here. And then I can drop that in there. So let's say that I'm going to get rid of this for the moment. And I also want to use the longitude, so I'm going to use the same thing, but with the longitude, and then put longitude here in Spanish. And finally, I think I might be missing something else in here. So let's say what this thing has. I do have my objects, so it's generating that. Let's see. Oh, this is kind of important. So you actually want to put those in layer on top. There we go. So now I can see all of the points that I have, and then I can add another attribute that can be either like the color, for instance, and then say that this is going to be like the population. And the population in this data set, it's a weird variable name. If you span one of those, then you're going to see is this one. And that's kind of like a variable encoding that the Colombian government use, like the Colombian statistics. sector, whatever. So now you can see it's sorting by that, and then it's showing by population. If you want to try with size, then you can do it like this. But then the problem of doing that is that you get a lot of occlusion. So one of the things, and actually this could be a little bit better for getting started, you can change the scale a little bit to try to make sure that they're easier to read. You can also use double encoding, and maybe sort also like for the order in which they're going to show, so that you can make sure that the darker ones are going to be on the top. But the one I want to create is something that is similar to the wedge, like this spike map that we have in here. So for that, recently I saw Jeffrey here using the shape wedge, and that one was for a wind map. So when you do that, then you have like these nice triangles. And then since I want that to be very exaggerated, then I can do something like, I can say that my range is going to go from 0 to 2000, I think. And then when I do that, like even 2000, it's too small, so I can go even bigger. And then the other thing I can do is that I can make sure that these ones are filled. So these are the ones, the opposite one. And this is the closest I got to that. So the nice thing is that it gives you a legend. You can also, like as usual, like I really like that with one line of code, you can add a tooltip. And then if you want to see what is the city, the city name, then you can say the detail, it's going to be field n, so it's at least we are adding that attribute. So we can say it's this one, and then sure. And of course I am missing a comma or something, and then now it's telling me, like, of course this should be properties municipio blah blah blah, and then you can see it in here. So one of the problems is that Bogota, it's actually not down here, it's around here, and the problem I think is that Vega-Lite is centering the element to the centroid of the symbol, so that's not what I want. But I still haven't figured out how to fix that. But as you can see, you can change those parameters in there. Now, the other thing that you can change when you're using a visualization that is not using GeoShape is, although I think you can change it for everything, is that you can change what is going to be the projection that you're going to use. And then there is a bunch of projections that you can get in here. So like the typical one will be Mercator, I think. Projection is not a function. Projection and project, maybe. There we go. So now changing that, it will change the way this thing looks like. If you search for Vega-Lite projections, then you're going to find this list of projections that you will find, especially on the Vega part, because those are the ones that the other one is using. Like specifically in this example, I saw these ones. So for instance, if you go with something like this one, then it's actually going to show it like very messed up. But one of the reasons for that is that you need first to rotate it, because now Colombia is kind of like on one of the sides of the globe. So if you see on the D3 version, they actually use very specific parameters for that. So if you go and check the projection that I was using in here, you can go and rotate the latitude and the coordinate, latitude and longitude for Colombia. And well, I wonder if there is an automatic way of centering that in there. But let's try that in here, rotate, and then pass these parameters. And now it looks a little bit better, although it might be still ascending in there. So this is how you can create some Vega-Lite visualizations. Hopefully that can be very useful for you. Remember, if you want to connect that with other techniques, then you can always just place the map on top of, for instance, a map box or something like that. The key will be coordinating the two to work together. But this is a good starting for that.